Hi everyone, Heather here with astrologywithheather.com, and I am back with another special video. And today I have with me a very special guest. His name is Raphael and his business is called Reydient Reality. And he is by far the best tarot reader that I've come across so far. So much so that I trusted him with a reading for my mother, which she loved, by the way. And so today we're actually going to be doing the beginning of a series that we're going to be doing together about tarot and astrology and the overlap and how we can kind of learn from one another with these types of things. And so without further ado, welcome Raphael, and thank you so much for being here.
Hi Heather, thank you so much for having me. It's amazing. I'm super chuffed to work with you. I absolutely love what you put out. I think your content is brilliant, and I'm super chuffed to be here. I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super excited to have you here, and I know like my audience is going to love this series and this video. And so let's kind of start with a little bit of a background of who you are and how did you even get into tarot in the first place? Because I don't even know this story.
Okay, so obviously I'm Raphael from Reydient Reality. So I started my tarot journey when I was quite young. So I started reading cards as cartomancy, which is playing cards. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah.
And then I kind of graduated from there to tarot at about 17. And just kind of kept building on it. And then about 8 years ago, started to sort of drive the whole thing towards being professional. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I think one of the things that I've discovered along the path is that you really have to kind of trust the cards, and there's so much in it. It's such a, just like astrology, you could study for a lifetime, right, and never know everything. But what I found was some really amazing links with astrology and tarot. So I'm really excited to kind of see what we can pick out.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stuff that you've sent me so far about like the links between astrology and tarot is super fascinating. And so you study astrology a little bit as well, right? You study Hellenistic astrology, which I
I
also
do,
study.
yeah. So love astrology, and I've kind of been dipping my toes in it for about 3 years now. I don't feel as confident with the astrology as I do with the tarot, obviously, because I've been doing it a lot longer. But I love it. It's just so fascinating how it's sometimes scarily accurate, right? It
Yeah.
just drills down and you can see it play out. And I think one of the things that I always found really fascinating was you speak to people that I don't believe in astrology, and then you talk to them and ask them questions, and they're so typically sort of their sign that you kind of like, I'm not sure. I think there's a bit more in it than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, on the same end of the spectrum or on the opposite end of the spectrum, like I've been studying astrology for a long time. That's what I do professionally. And I kind of dabble in tarot just for myself and my own purposes, but not to the level that you do. So I feel like this is going to be a really good balance here. So yeah, that's super interesting. So kind of let's get into what we're going to be doing here with this series, and let's talk about some of the overlap between tarot and astrology. So that's kind of your area where you've been diving into. So where is there overlap? And kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about is like how the tarot is different than astrology. It's like there's an overlap, but it's not the same thing.
Absolutely. So they are totally different systems. I think, well, obviously astrology is a lot older. You can trace that back to, you know, like thousands of years. Tarot, not so much. It is kind of a newer system. One of the things that I love, astrology is where the sky will speak to you. And the cards or tarot as a system, or the book of life or the book of wisdom, as it may have been called in some traditions, is kind of like it's like a map of the soul's journey through life, all of the experiences that we can have, all of the highs and the lows, you know, all of the moments that we'll travel through a lifetime in sort of pictograms. And one idea that I read years ago now that I absolutely loved was this idea that each card is a condensed version of several sort of hundreds, sometimes even thousands of different concepts, just really distilled down into a specific message. So when you talk about, say, the major arcana in tarot, you're talking about the really big moments of people's lives that we experience: birth, death, marriage, you know, partnerships, commitments. And it's just fascinating that you can see all of that stuff. And when we talk about the Fool, which is, you know, that's where we're going to be starting, I'm really excited about that. You can see that the Fool kind of represents a person or a soul and their journey throughout life. So that's where the kind of tarot will start at that 0 point, and it will travel the entire deck, kind of like the sun in astrology, right? It travels the whole zodiac, gaining knowledge and wisdom and different insights from from all the different sectors that it goes through and signs. And it's the same for the tarot. So where is the overlap? There are 22 major arcana cards. They're not numbered, so, which a lot of people always get like really confused about, like, how is there 22 cards?
Yeah.
So obviously the Fool is 0, so he's kind of there but not there. He's all things but no thing. And then you have the rest of the cards, which are numbered 1 to 21. So in total, that gives you 22. When you think about the signs and the planets, you get a combination of 22. So each one of those has like a different aspect or attribute of the zodiac. And that's just in the major arcana, without including sort of the minor cards as well. So yeah, fascinating, very different, but the overlap is beautiful. And I think when you know the tarot well, you can pick out the astrology. And when you're a good astrologer, like you are, no, absolutely, you really, really are. And I don't say that just because you're here. Like, I've been watching your stuff for a while, and I think you're brilliant, and I love it. And when you're a good astrologer, you can see, like, it's amazing. Like, even intuitively, astrologers will look at cards and be like, well, the meanings behind that kind of sound like this planet or this sign. And I just love that. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you first sent me that email and you were talking about how it's Aries season and we're going to start with the Fool, I thought you meant that it was connected to Aries. But as soon as I was like looking at it, I was like, this has to have a Uranus or an Aquarius association. And that's actually what it was that Uranus and Aquarius association, because there is a lot of overlap in the symbolism. But kind of the difference between tarot and astrology is astrology, we're looking at these planetary correspondences that are always there. It's like it's set from birth, right? Like everything that you're going to experience based on the astrology and the alignments that are happening even right now are predetermined at the time of your birth, because it's based on how it aligns with your birth chart using these different timing techniques. Whereas tarot operates a little bit differently. So if you could talk about that for just a second for those who aren't familiar, how does tarot work in your viewpoint?
I love it. So obviously I talked about those pictures and the pictograms. The way that I believe tarot works is it will speak directly to your subconscious. And I see your subconscious as like your gateway to spiritual energy or the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. And those pictures sort of act directly on your subconscious, and they kind of almost like zhuzh up against your intuition to kind of wake it up. And when you sort of unlock that and you trust it, it gives you sometimes really specific events. Sometimes there will be really you know, sometimes it can be like really mundane things, like it will spell things out very literally, and then other times it's like the allegory. So how that works, I believe that we tap into the client's energy. Our energy expands to receive their energy sort of reaches out to touch ours. And in that, when you're looking at the cards, over time you absorb so many different ideas and things that you read about them, things that you study about them. That coupled with your own innate intuition and your understanding, it taps you into something other. And if you think about the tarot itself as sort of almost like a book, it's like a picture book of life, right? So when you see certain cards, you can look at them and say, right, okay, the experience that comes with that card is this. And what I feel from my energy or my intuition about you as a person is this. And you kind of get this almost like seamless sort of understanding of what's taking place. But yeah, very, very intricate. I love what you mentioned about the astrology as well, because how that affects you here is totally different. So astrology is a lot more about your timing, and it's about the things that are kind of locked in and set. Whereas the tarot is more sort of watery. It will kind of tell you about your feelings, what's coming up, and how that plays out for you.
Okay, yeah, that makes complete sense. And there are some aspects of that in astrology too, because as an astrologer, you have to, it's similar. There's layers and layers and layers of meaning behind everything that you can find in the chart. And it's about picking out the right meanings and the right potentials that aligns with what you're kind of feeling about that person. For some astrologers, you can be a very technical astrologer and still do really well without using any intuition whatsoever. And you can be a very intuitive astrologer and use that as sort of a guidepost, but not necessarily be very technical. So there's a spectrum there, but there's still that usually an interaction between the symbolism of the astrology and the intuition of the astrologer that kind of guides you with that. So there's some overlap in the way that works. But yeah, so I guess let's get into some of these tarot cards because we're going to be going really in depth in this, you guys, in this entire series. And if you want to follow the whole series, you're going to have to jump on over to Reydient Reality on YouTube and then kind of jump back and forth because we're going to be switching and taking turns here. But we're going to go through the entire major arcana, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so chuffed that when you said yes, I was like, awesome. This is great. Yeah, just because, and obviously going back and forth between our channels, so we'll post them alternately. So if you want to see the whole series, you'll have to be in both places. The beauty of the internet. All right, so I've got some cards here in front of me. I think this is one that everybody knows. This is the Fool, and this is obviously where we're going to start, right? And I found it so interesting that you mentioned Uranus, because the Fool has a very Uranian kind of energy. It's very spontaneous. It's very sort of out of the box. Interestingly enough, as well, what I loved about what you said about Aries and the Fool, so true, because it's kind of like that. Sort of not even steadfast, just foolhardy, right? Straight in, both feet first. Oh no, that's not working. Okay, we'll try a different way. So this is the starting point, and obviously for the major arcana, but for the entire deck, and because it's numbered 0, this represents that sort of pure potential of things. There's so much that I could say about this, but I'll move on to some others. So I've got another one here that tends to throw a lot of people into a tizzy, the Tower.
Yeah.
So you're right. And when people see this card, they tend to get a bit like, oh, okay. I think part of it is because it looks quite foreboding when you look at it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
And even in the deck that I use, it's like a happier looking deck because it's all nature and animals and stuff. But let me show you the Tower card. Even this one looks kind of menacing. It's like this tree is just gonna.
oh, wow. Yeah.
This tree's obviously not gonna last, right? So
yeah. And even that. So when you consider some of the symbolism behind the Tower, just to take it to one of the in-depth sort of feels about this card that I love. If you consider, so in the Tarot de Marseille, this card was called La Maison de Dieu, so it's called like the House of God. And for me, I've always seen the human being as the house of God, right? We have that sort of essence in us that belongs to the divine. And so the crown that's being struck off is the head. This is like a lightning bolt of information or a download of something that pops in, sudden information and knowledge that just finds you. And very often, after those sort of tower moments, nothing is the same. It's like when an illusion cracks or it falls away and you're like, wow, I did not see that before. It's kind of like that moment, like in a film where you're watching it and you're like, I reckon it was them. No, it was them. And then all of a sudden you find out who done it and you're like, okay, I couldn't have predicted that. Like, wow, it's that moment of kind of pure realization. And usually very shocking as well.
Oh yeah, interesting. So what would be the astrological correspondence to the Tower card?
To the Tower. So the Tower has 2, and your Tower card would be Mars because of like the blasting and the heat and the sort of severing kind of thing. And also this has an overlap as Uranus as well, which is interesting because we talked about the Fool as Uranus, right? So the Fool tends to bring you kind of like it's like the blessing of Uranus, when like that happy surprise turns up, or you find some money on the floor, or you have a conversation that's like amazing. The Tower card tends to bring you the moments that are a bit more a bit more deep, and they tend to be more about the diversion of your path. It's like, right, okay, I can't continue going down that path. I have to go somewhere else now.
Okay, so they're both kind of about like change, new beginnings, and liberation, but it's sort of from a different vantage point, and those would both be Uranian energies.
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
I like that.
Another one that I've got that tends to grab people's attention is the Devil card. um, right. And I think the big one, so the astrological association for this is Capricorn.
Makes sense, obviously.
Yeah, right. And one of the things about this card is it's the result of the decisions that you've made. And you can kind of see that in Capricorn, right? Because they fix their sort of sights on something and just continually work at that, right? They almost like workaholics. They'll get stuck in a process and kind of say, well, that's where I need to be. The Devil card is where you see the results of the actions or the choices that you've made. And an interesting part about this, your Devil card is number 15. 1 and 5 gives you 6, right? So when you simplify that, the number 6 tarot card is the Lovers, which represents choice. So the Devil is the outcome of the choices that you've made.
Interesting. And that makes a lot of sense with that Capricornian energy as well, because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is sort of this reap what you sow energy. It's karma. It's karma that carries over from past lifetimes, but it's especially like the results of where you showed up and where you were responsible versus where maybe you didn't do that and you made the wrong choices or you neglected certain things that you should have been doing. Very interesting.
That's so awesome. That's perfect. Like literally, it's totally that. All right, let's do some happy ones now. Everyone's probably like, oh my gosh, it's all the heavy stuff.
Tarot's terrifying.
Yeah. We got the Sun card. This is like the best card in the
I like that. Happy baby.
It's like, it's literally, and the beauty of this card, I mean, I don't read reversals. But I know a lot of people that do. The Sun card is the one card in the deck that even when reversed, it doesn't have a negative meaning. It's such a bright, powerful light. It adds strength and power to everything that it touches. And the Sun card in tarot is the sun. It's so like it's literally the sun. The other thing about this, I mean, I have seen it represent Leos, which makes sense because Leo. And I've also seen it represent Aries as well, which is interesting because you see the little kind of baby on the
horse. So, and the sun is exalted in Aries, so it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got one more for you, which is, I think this was another really popular one.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting card.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, this one, along with the Wheel of Fortune, these are like packed with symbolism. So this card, its planetary association is actually Mercury.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Which is, yeah, all about communication. It's all about speaking, writing. I've seen this card represent public speakers, writers, authors. I have seen this card represent Geminis and again Aries. Aries is a bit of a hog. They're kind of everywhere in this. Yeah, the Aries association is very much because it's like the first one. It's that projectile sort of confident masculine energy and force. In terms of Geminis, this is, you know, Mercury's their ruler. So it has that sort of natural speech, that natural flair for making things sound good or come across well. Yeah, so again, there's so much more that I could say.
Well, with Gemini, there's sort of this like duality and trickster energy that comes with it. Is that something that's indicated by the Magician as well?
Absolutely. So if you think about magicians, if you think about magicians throughout history, you think about wizards and witches, they've all been known as tricksters. Absolutely. It can have that sort of energy. And the interesting thing about this as well, if you see the Mobius veil above his head,
Mhm.
That's kind of the reminder that what goes up must come down. You know, what is good can sometimes be inverted and be not so good. Kind of like, you know, when Mercury's retrograde. And we all know that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's so fascinating. I'm so excited to get started on this series.
Yeah, me too.
So do you have any final thoughts before we jump on over to your channel and get started with the Fool?
Um, no, just yeah, make sure you check out Heather's channel. Make sure you come over to mine. You're going to see the whole series there. And yeah, if you've ever got any comments, please put them down.
Yeah, we'll go through and answer your questions. I'm always good about, at least like I hit that little heart button so you know that I read your comments.
Yeah.
And Raphael will be coming in and checking in on us as well. So yeah, so we'll see you over on Raphael's channel. We're going to start talking about the Fool. We're going to go through the entire major arcana, and I'm super excited about it. And so I'll post a link to his YouTube channel down in the description below, and hopefully we'll see you guys there. And make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share this with your friends if you think the content is interesting and they might enjoy it as well. All right, thank you so much, Raphael. I'll see you
Thanks
soon.
so much. See you soon.